The Indianapolis Colts are traveling south to take on another division rival in the Jacksonville Jaguars for first place in the AFC South. Does Gardner Minshew finally get his revenge against the team that dumped him for Trevor Lawrence? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here, as always, with my fellow writer, analyst, and co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, big game for Gardner Minshew, big game for the Colts. Anthony Richardson obviously not playing in this one and won't be playing for some time. So gives Gardner a chance to go out there and show the Jacksonville Jaguars that, hey, he can still win in the NFL.
Yeah, and the thing is that, and we'll get to it, but the Jaguars have a soft secondary. I mean, they're not an intimidating team against the pass. So if they can't get to Minshew, he's just the wrong kind of quarterback for a secondary that's struggling. Because kind of like Stafford did to the Colts, he'll take what you give him. If you give him some explosive plays, he doesn't have the arm for it necessarily, but I mean, he's probably still going to make some good throws downfield. So I'm intrigued by this matchup. It sucks deeply that it's not Anthony Richardson because I would have loved to see him get another crack at the Jaguars. But hey, you know what? It happens in the NFL, and at least you got the best insurance policy that money can buy in the league.
Right, and we'll talk about Anthony Richardson's injury and things that we have heard later in the show, but we're focusing on Jacksonville. This is a very big divisional matchup for the Indianapolis Colts. If the Colts lose on Sunday, they lose the tiebreaker to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But if they win, not only are they a game up on the Jags, they also take that tiebreaker. So going to be very interesting game to see and to watch on Sunday. NFL Nerd from Nova Scotia is joining us. Great to see you. Thanks for coming back. We have the GOAT, Logan Schmidt, in the building as well. Thanks, Logan. Always great to see you here. We've got Lawrence Stogner. Keep up the great work, Andrew and Drake. Your thoughts on the following, please. AR is a unicorn. Great excitement, but early injury concerns. I have 2 suggestions to help prolong his career. And then Logan comes in with our first super chat of the evening as well. Oh, not Logan, Lawrence. I'm sorry. Lawrence Stogner with our first super chat. Thank you so much, Lawrence. And we'll certainly talk about Anthony Richardson's injury later in the show when we go over the injury report. But I wouldn't say that there might be some concerns, but as we said in our last episode, I'm not on the boat that Anthony Richardson is injury prone. Not yet. Just in my opinion, looking as I've watched these injuries over and over and over again, the replays, more bad luck than anything else. But really appreciate the super chat, Lawrence, and thanks for getting us started on a hot note. Logan says curse gets broken this Sunday. Boys, I know Colts fans really want to get that win in Jacksonville. Kelly saying the same thing, end the streak in Clown Town. And then Austin saying need Jerry Jeudy on this team. We're going to talk about some Jerry Jeudy towards the end of the episode and the rumors that are flying around there. So before we get started, please, if you haven't done so, go follow us on all of our social medias, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live. Whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up Show, just over 150 subscribers until we reach 2K. So please, if you haven't done so, subscribe so we can get over that 2K mark here, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. And if you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. And then I think this is what was going with Lawrence's super chat. So I want to make sure I highlight this before we dive in, Drake. Lawrence says his suggestions to help with Anthony Richardson: jiu-jitsu to help with situational awareness, and falling, and natural grass for Lucas Oil Stadium. So Lawrence, I'm going to start with that second one. Natural grass inside of Lucas Oil Stadium, as of right now, can't happen. The way Lucas Oil Stadium was built, there is no irrigation system. That's why whenever there's any sort of threat of rain, the roof is closed. When it was built, it wasn't built to really deal with any water. So it would cost a lot to kind of redo that for Lucas Oil Stadium. and I just don't think that is in the plans. But as far as jujitsu, Drake, this is where I want to get your opinion, because you're bigger into MMA than I am, and I know that Tua Tagovailoa has gone through some jujitsu training to help as far as being able to position his body to not take as many hits, or make the hits not as hard when he falls. But it's definitely something that I think other quarterbacks have started to look into.
Yeah, I mean, mixed martial arts has been used by plenty of NFL players to like just hone their skills and just get better, in better shape and whatnot. I mean, one that sticks out is like offensive linemen with boxing, that really
Mhm.
helps them with their hands and helps them with their hand speed and whatnot. But that's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because yeah, I mean, these guys in mixed martial arts, if they are really good in jujitsu, they have to bend, they have to tweak their bodies, they have to turn themselves in absolutely ridiculous positions to get submissions. So I think that'll help with his, flexibility potentially. And like he said, like Lauren said, it also helps with body awareness, because you're constantly having to know where you're at in the octagon, or like in a ring or whatever you're fighting in. And it's a very small area. So you really get to know how big your body is. You really get to know like what it can and cannot do, and kind of how to position it when you fall, and all sorts of other stuff like that. So that is pretty interesting that he mentioned that.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. Definitely, I think the Colts will be working on that, and formulating a game plan to try to help prevent these injuries in the future. Because when you have a franchise player like Anthony Richardson, you want him out there as much as possible. But Drake, we're talking about week 6 tonight. The Colts are 4-point underdogs in Jacksonville this weekend. Definitely, it's definitely a closer line than it was week 1. I think week 1 the spread was like 7.5, and we feel like we've came a long way since week 1. The Colts and Jags tied atop the AFC South standings. The Jags are on a little winning streak, coming back from London, won 2 straight over there. Just came off a victory against the Buffalo Bills, and obviously the Colts coming off a victory against the Tennessee Titans at home. So another tough divisional matchup, this time on the road, and I think it's probably going to be a dogfight between these two teams.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a 10-point win from either side. I think that they're a little bit more familiar now. It was the first game of the season. All those hiccups that every team has in their first week, they happened from both sides in that game. Both sides kind of at times looked timid. And, I mean, Calvin Ridley was just working with Trevor Lawrence in real action for the first time. So, like, and he tore it up in the first half. So, we'll get to that later. But yeah, I do think it's going to be harder fought. I do think it's going to be closer than people expect. And, later on, we'll get to a prediction. I've got a pretty interesting one that I'm pretty confident in, actually.
Love it, love it. Can't wait to hear that. So, of course, when you talk about Jacksonville and with Gardner Minshew now starting at quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, obviously you're going to talk about revenge game. Now, when asked about it earlier this week, Gardner Minshew played it down. Didn't really say he didn't really want to talk about it. Said, I mean, it was a long time ago. Have good memories in Jacksonville. There isn't any animosity towards that. But at the same time, human nature has to take over. And even Shane Steichen himself in his presser this week said, this is a big game for Gardner, and I'm excited to see what he does on that field on Sunday. So, revenge game for Gardner Minshew. We'll have to see if the Colts get the dub on Sunday. But what do you expect out of number 10 as he leads this offense against the Jaguars, Drake?
Well, I think that he's going to have Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss at his disposal. So you're going to see him probably handing the ball off substantially. I think the ground game is going to be important. But if we're talking about just Gardner Minshew, it's going to be business as usual. I think that he's going to hit those short throws. He's going to take what the defense gives him. He's not going to put the ball in harm's way. But I also think that they're ready for this. I think Jacksonville's like, look, he's short. He throws the ball short. Even though our secondary has struggled this season, we got to press them, make him beat you. You got to try to make him maybe make a different decision in quick time. So there might be some early shots just to loosen up that secondary. I really do think they're going to come out aggressive. I think they're going to press those receivers and force Gardner Minshew to be really, really accurate in some really small spaces. So I think he's going to have to open up a little bit. And like I said, I think Shane Steichen's going to do something where he opens up the game a little bit more early on for him.
I tend to agree in that they're gonna have to try to get the ball out of Gardner Minshew's hands quickly.
Yep.
I mean, if I'm the Jaguars, I'm watching that game against Baltimore where Gardner Minshew did start, played that whole game, and what was one of the biggest weaknesses or that we saw from Gardner Minshew in that game is either identifying the free man, the free blitzer, or being able to get the ball out quickly when there was more pressure than could be picked up. So I'm sure we're probably going to see that from the Jaguars. They're going to want to try to put pressure on Gardner Minshew early to force him into some mistakes, and that's what the Colts are going to have to be prepared for that. So obviously having a backfield with Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor helps, especially with Jonathan Taylor expected to get more reps and more touches this week, but you still have to be on your game in the pass in the passing game, and I think the Jaguars overall rank I think around 11th in total yards allowed, total passing yards allowed. So well, they're not towards the top of the league in pass defense. They certainly have enough there. I mean, Tyson Campbell is a phenomenal cornerback. Andre Cisco can certainly lay a hit down. So they might not be one of the best, but they can certainly hold their own against the pass.
Yeah, and hey, this is still a young receiving core. I mean, this is a receiving core that outside of Michael Pittman is still developing, and so you still don't have Jelani Woods either. So the tight ends are pretty young as well, outside of Kylan Granson. So you're absolutely right. I think that they've got a chance to really make Gardner Minshew make the decisions, make perfect throws, that sort of situation. I just do think they're going to be aggressive and they're going to press those receivers. And like you said, they're going to pull off a Kyle Hamilton if they can. They're going to try to blitz some of those secondary guys.
Don't be surprised if Andre Cisco, you see him coming like a heat-seeking missile into Gardner Minshew. The Colts are going to have to be ready for that on Sunday, or it could be a long day for this offense. And I don't know if they're going to be able to get as many field goals from Matt Gay to pull off the upset as they did in Baltimore. First super chat of the evening for the CFO of Horseshoe Huddle, Patrick Rye. Patrick, thank you so much for your support, buddy. His first one of the evening says, rumor has it Jerry Jeudy has set his DVR to catch the Colts game this weekend. So yeah, we're going to talk about Jerry Jeudy towards the end of the episode here, and everything that we've heard and everything that's been reported. So I mean, hey, could the Colts be making a move at the trade deadline for a wide receiver? We'll have to see what happens. But Patrick, thank you so much for all the support, buddy, and for every single one of your super chats. They certainly do not go unnoticed. But Drake, we talked about the running game, helping Gardner Minshew and taking some pressure off the backup quarterback. Jonathan Taylor last week, only 10 total snaps, 6 carries, 18 yards, caught his lone target and took on a screen, took it 16 yards. And did I say 16 yards for his rushing? If I did, I'm at 18 yards. But it seems like Jonathan Taylor, from what Shane Steichen has said, going to get some more run this weekend. They're going to gradually ramp him up until he comes back to his full load of work or close to it. Now that Zach Moss is playing at such a high level, but what do you expect out of Jonathan Taylor this weekend? Let's first, how much do you expect him to play, and what is he going to do in those snaps?
Oh, I can't remember. Did he have 10 snaps?
10 total snaps on Sunday against the Titans.
Okay, and if there's like on average what between 55 and 70 snaps for an NFL team. So
Colts had about 61 plays on offense last week.
Okay, so he played like 16% of the snaps then. So I would say that you're going to see him play more like maybe 25 to 30. You're going to see him. They do not. That's the beautiful thing, is they don't have to rush him. He hasn't even started his contract year yet. They don't have to rush him back out there. They can just slowly make sure he's good, because Zach Moss is playing like a top 5 running back right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you don't have to rush Taylor back out there, but I do think that he gets 10 to 14 touches. Again, I think if the Colts can, I think they're going to run that ball as much as possible. I really think they're going to break the will of Jacksonville. So, and they've got a great run defense, so we'll see which breaks. But I do think that, like you said, the workload is going to steadily increase. You're not going to see 20, 25 carries tomorrow, or even in this third game. You're going to see it slowly worked in.
Right. And so I do expect Jonathan Taylor to probably have maybe instead of 10 plays, you're looking at maybe 20, 25 plays. It's going to be a gradual increase, because I mean, people forget. Yeah, see, he's been out since December. So he didn't participate in anything in the offseason, did not participate in anything in preseason, training camp, nothing. So gradually working him back into this thing is the smart way to go about it, especially when you have the third leading rusher in the NFL in your stable in Zach Moss, who just went off for 195 total yards and 2 touchdowns a week ago. So you want to keep those guys fresh, keep increasing Jonathan Taylor's load, but you're still going to give the ball to Zach Moss. You're still going to lean on him heavily to do some work for this offense. And the more weeks we go along with this, the closer we get to that full 1-2 punch between those two running backs. So heavy dose of Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss is probably to be expected. Try to slow the game down a little bit. Make it so that the Jaguars can't just tee off on Gardner Minshew. You don't want to be looking at 3rd and 9, or having a sack and have it be 3rd and 12, getting behind the chains. When you have two dominant backs in Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, you want to be able to use them, and so that way you can control the tempo, control the game, stay ahead of the chains, and just gradually move down the field with those two.
Yeah, and they're going to benefit from having the other up to speed on everything. I mean, Zach Moss, look, man, it's not sustainable to have 30 attempts and then 23 attempts and 150 rushing yards. It's just not sustainable for 17 games. So I think if you have both him and Taylor, who are both really up to speed with Steichen's offense already, Moss is already there, but he could really afford to have it dialed back just a hair, because I do think that he's going to benefit from having Taylor. Taylor's obviously more of the overall back, but he's the speed back. He's the elusive back. He's the home run punch, whereas Zach Moss, while he can make a lot happen, as we've seen, he is the power back. He's the gritty runner. I love how Zach Hicks mentioned he reminds him of Frank Gore. I love that. That's a great comparison because he fights for those extra yards. He makes those catches when he needs to, but he's not the specialist. So, like you said, hey, man, it's going to be nice to see them both out there with a more shared workload.
Now the Colts are going to have to be on their P's and Q's. They're going to have to execute in the running game, because when you look at the defensive rankings overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars have the 5th best rushing defense in the entire NFL. They're only allowing about 81.6 yards per game. So they're really focused on stopping the run, and they've been really dominating in that category. So keeping Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor fresh throughout the game will certainly help. But again, it's kind of have to go on this offensive line, which Drake, it's looking like, don't want to jinx anything, but it's looking like the Colts are going to have their full starting line back. Bernhard Raimann has practiced in full the past 2 days in practice. He is clearing concussion protocol as we speak. So getting Bernhard Raimann back is huge. Blake Freeland, obviously, I think did a much better job against the Titans than he did against the Rams. But Bernhard Raimann has been a top 10 tackle in the NFL so far this season. Quentin Nelson not on the injury report for the first time in 2 to 3 weeks. Ryan Kelly came back and reasserted himself again, continuing to play like the best center in football. Will Fries continuing to play well. But Braden Smith, after a slow start to the season, has been doing pretty well these past few weeks. So offensive line starting to gel, really starting to come on. How do you think they're going to do against this Jaguars front that likes to be really, really aggressive and not only get after the run, but they really like to get after the quarterback as well?
Yeah, and I'm actually like looking at their team stats, and I mean, I just see tackles for loss all over the place. I mean, the 23 on the season, and a lot comes from their linebackers and a couple from their corners and safeties, like Andre Sisco, like you mentioned. So, I think that the Colts do have a really good, because again, I'm not saying you can throw away the first game of the season. You can't. It's a loss. But here's the thing, man. This was a team that was in their first game coming off of a disgusting year. Okay, so it's like, I think that they're a much more revamped group now. I think that they've got some games underneath them, and I think that it's going to really be important if Braden Smith plays or Blake Freeland plays, because yes, Freeland played better. He definitely did. Give him a lot of credit. But he will be going against Josh Allen, who in the first game had 3 sacks against the Colts. And this is against Anthony Richardson. This isn't against a pocket passer who can't run or who can run away from him. I mean, Minshew's going to take the hit, or he's just going to lose the yards and go down. So I think that it's very important that they track Josh Allen. He's a name that just gets lost because he has the same name as a quarterback for the Bills. This man's a menace. He's tied for second right now in the league in sacks, and he got half of his 6 in that first game against the Colts. So I know it's cliche, but man, you got to track Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think you do. And some of those, here's the thing with Josh Allen as well. While he does have 6 sacks, you can block him, because two of those 3 sacks that he had against the Indianapolis Colts were because Anthony Richardson was pushed or ran out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage, and Josh Allen was just the closest defender, so he gets credited for that sack. So you take that away, Josh Allen, you're looking about same sack numbers as Samson Ebukam and Kwity Paye, but he still can wreck the game. And a lot of times he lines up over the right tackle, so that's normally Braden Smith's job to handle. And I think with Braden Smith playing better the past couple weeks, I mean, he was among the top 5 best or highest graded Colts the past 2 weeks. And so he's getting some momentum on his side. He is dealing with a little bit of a wrist injury. And I think maybe even a foot injury. So Braden Smith is a little bit banged up. Foot, wrist, and hip. So definitely banged up a little bit. Did not practice on Wednesday, was limited today. So, but I think Braden Smith is still tracking to play on Sunday against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But boy, having a group of a full group and a full arsenal on that offensive line, especially how they dominated up front against the Tennessee Titans, you can probably expect that an effort like that against these Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, and hey, you know what? I think somebody mentioned it that Tennessee did have the best run defense as far as average yards. And I mean, we're talking top 5. These guys were menaces. Guys like Jeffrey Simmons, I mean, they would stuff the run. And the Colts just ran right over them. They did not care about that. Zach Moss had just watched Jonathan Taylor get an extension of a lifetime, and he had a career day. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, maybe the Colts are just like, you know what? Nope, you guys are snow. We're the bulldozer. We're going to take you guys out.
Absolutely. We
get
a
snow plow. Sorry.
You get it.
I get it. Yeah.
Another super chat from Patrick Rye. Thank you so much, Patrick. You're just an absolute legend with all of these super chats that are flying in. Patrick says, I'd be shocked if the Jags didn't try to rush or blitz a safety like the Ravens effectively did against Minshew. So hopefully the running back pass protection was stressed this week. And that's what we kind of talked about earlier, is that when you watch that game against the Ravens, Kyle Hamilton had 3 sacks on the day. And so Andre Sisco is probably going to be that guy to come off the edge. So if I'm a defensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's what I'm doing. And until the Colts can stop it, you continue to send that free blitzer, especially on 3rd down. So I think the Colts should have a game plan for that. If not, then I think it could be a long day for this offense. So, Patrick, thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support. Really does mean a lot to us. I want to highlight one more comment from our buddies over there at Bring the Juice.
Hey.
Sup, boys? Derek here. Biggest concern for me is our run game will suffer with AR's ability to run not being available for the next few weeks. And that's going to have to be on the offensive line and this running back group. You're not going to have Anthony Richardson freezing the defense with his running ability as much. So it's going to have to be Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor leading the way and relying on this offensive line to dominate up front.
Yeah, it's like you said, that the run that Zach Moss had that was 56 yards, it was because of just a millisecond of a delay from the safety when Anthony Richardson had the ball in his hands, and it allowed Zach Moss, who's typically not your burner, to just outrun him. So I think that it's going to be interesting. I do think that with the increased workload on Jonathan Taylor's end, it might not matter as much, but it makes it even more important than ever that the offensive line has to show up and make it happen.
Exactly. And again, I mean, the Colts offense is going to have definitely a challenge going up against this Jaguars defense. we've already seen what Trevor Lawrence did against this Colts defense. So as we pivot on over to the other side of the ball, I feel like we're a broken record, but every time we talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, we talk about putting the pressure on Trevor Lawrence. And it seemed like in the first game, the Colts were able to get some pressure on the edge. Kwity Paye got a sack, Samson Ebukam was getting back there, but not much up front. And I think that's where this is really going to lie, Drake, is being able to get to Forrest Buckner, Grover Stewart, get that pressure right in Trevor Lawrence's face so he can't step up into a throw, can't break containment. You're really going to need to get those two defensive tackles right into Trevor Lawrence's lap and make him uncomfortable so he can't just dink and dunk it down the field.
Yeah, it's the absolute worst for a quarterback is having it right up, right in your face, like having the pressure come right at you. I'm right there with you. I think that especially Taven Bryan too. That's another factor because he specializes in pass rush. So I think if him, Stewart, Buckner, if they can really get a nice rotation going on, and even the rotational ends like Odangbo and guys like Tyquan Lewis, who's been doing his typical Tyquan Lewis thing of just being a solid piece in that defense, you can really make Trevor Lawrence hurry. And we saw statistics about it with Ryan Tannehill. The guy's lazy or accurate with a clean pocket, but when there's pressure, he's under 50%. I mean, it happens with every quarterback. You put that pressure, especially up the middle, though, they can't see, they have to bail. And if they're not the runner, and Trevor Lawrence is mobile, but he's not a running quarterback, you can catch him if he's trying to bail.
Exactly. So that's and the thing is too, the Jaguars love to get rid of the ball quickly. Doug Peterson loves to dial up plays for Trevor Lawrence to get the ball out to his playmakers, because you're talking about Travis Etienne, Evan Ingram, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk. They have a lot of weapons on that offense. So to neutralize the pass rush, Trevor Lawrence does a really good job of getting the ball out of his hands quickly. So that's what you need to see. You need to see this pass rush really getting on to Trevor Lawrence. Maybe we see more man coverage out of the Colts this weekend, more press, so you can have the physical cornerbacks like Kenny Moore, like a Juju Brents, really disrupt things with those wide receivers. So that way Trevor Lawrence can't just pick them apart and dink and dunk it down the field. But I did mention one of those weapons, Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne, the running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's been on a tear. He really lit into that Buffalo Bills defense last week, and he was the one that got the game-sealing touchdown against the Colts in week 1. So Drake, what are the Colts going to have to do in order to limit the impact that Travis Etienne has in this game on Sunday?
Yeah, I honestly, when he was paired with Trevor Lawrence, I was like, that could be intriguing. I did not expect him to be such a devastating back. I mean, he can really destroy your defense. I think that if they do need to turn to the run, they can do it. Jacksonville, you always think about this pass-heavy scheme and Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence and all these incredible receivers like Ridley and Kirk. But my goodness, man, Travis Etienne, he can absolutely be a problem. I can't remember the amount of carries they gave him, but it was high-volume stuff against the Colts in week 1. And so I think that if they can, they're going to lean on the run as well, because it's going to make life for Trevor Lawrence even easier if they can establish that ground game. So I think that he's also a pretty good passing back. Look for guys like Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, and I think Shaq Leonard's returning. I don't think that he was limited.
Shaq is on pace to return as well.
Yeah, so I think that the linebackers are going to be huge to limit him in the passing game, because Tank Bigsby's really not the big receiving back. So yeah, I think he's just another freaking weapon, high energy, high potency weapon in a very high potential offense that if you let them get rolling with the ground game, man, it could really serve bad for you later on, especially in the second half.
I agree. And I think the biggest, you kind of touched on it, but to me, the biggest threat with Travis Etienne is through the air, being able to be that outlet for Trevor Lawrence when pressure starts to enclose in the pocket, being able to dump it off to Etienne. And Etienne is so shifty. He does a really good job of making the first person miss. So Colts are going to have to be really, really careful as far as letting Etienne kind of slip out on a 3rd and 7, and he's able to pick up 8 when you have everybody else covered. So you said it, Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, Shaq Leonard, those guys that are typically going to be matched up on Travis Etienne out of the backfield, need to wrap him up quickly, so that way he can't just start to really move the chains and allow the Jaguars to dictate the pace of this game. And if that happens, I think that taking that weapon away from the Jacksonville Jaguars and make them really throw it downfield, I don't think that's their strong suit. I think, to me, their strong suit is really those easy, quick passes, dink and dunking it down the field. And if you can take that out of the game for the Jaguars, your defense is going to have the edge there. But when they do start to throw it down the field, they throw it to Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, that connection with Trevor Lawrence has proven already in this season to be very, very hard to stop. We saw it the past couple weeks in London, what Calvin Ridley was able to do. And in this first matchup, the Calvin Ridley in the first half, I think either he was close to 100 yards or had over 100 yards in the first half against the Indianapolis Colts until they made some second half adjustments. But what are the Colts going to have to do? You still got that young secondary. Obviously, Juju Brents wasn't playing last time. Jalen Jones wasn't out there the last time that the Colts faced the Jaguars. What are some changes that you think we might see to kind of slow down Calvin Ridley and the rest of these Jaguars pass catchers?
I'm going to go back to what we were talking about earlier. There's going to be press coverage. I mean, they're going to put a giant guy like Juju Brents on him. And, the thing about Calvin Ridley is he's actually third right now on the team in catches, behind Evan Ingram with 29, and Kirk leads the team with 30. But it's because of the presence of Calvin Ridley, because he has 22 catches, but he's second on the team in yards by just 2. So he's averaging 15 yards a catch. I mean, this is a big play dude, man. I mean, he is no joke. If you let him run rampant, he will ruin you. I mean, I still think he's a top 10 receiver. I think his talent is top 10 level. So yes, he is of the utmost importance. And at the end of the day, though, I do think that Jalen Jones and Juju Brents both play better press. I think I think Jalen Jones plays better press. Juju plays better in zone. But don't be surprised if he lines up in the slot. You see Kenny Moore take over duties, because in that game where he was going off in the first half, they put Kenny Moore on him mostly in the second half, and he was negated for the most part. So I think that they forced Trevor Lawrence to go to other routes. They put pressure on him and forced him to go to other receivers and tight ends and running backs. So at the end of the day, though, priority number one outside of Trevor Lawrence is you have to contain Calvin Ridley. So look for that to be priority number one, and I bet they do it through press coverage.
That very good point. Shout out to my beautiful wife, Danielle, for the super sticker, her nightly super sticker. Thank you so much for all of your support as well. But yeah, Drake, I fully expect this Colts secondary to be a lot more physical with the Jaguars this time around. We saw it, or at least I saw it last week, where Juju Brents, whenever he was matched up on DeAndre Hopkins, the Colts hardly ever have one cornerback follow a wide receiver, and most teams don't. But whenever DeAndre Hopkins was lined up across from Juju Brents gave him hell. And DeAndre Hopkins was getting very, very frustrated with Juju Brents on him, the physicality that he brought. I saw DeAndre Hopkins chirping to the refs multiple times about how Brents was playing him, and Brents kind of fueled into that. Brents didn't back down. So whenever Calvin Ridley is up against Juju Brents, I'm going to be excited to see how the rookie handles it. The rookie has been playing very, very well. He hasn't been afraid of any wide receiver that he's gone up against. He's starting to get more and more confident as the games go along. So this secondary for the Colts, I think, is ready to prove that the first game against the Jaguars was not their finest moment. And they're ready to go out there and kind of prove that they are a better unit than that first week. And they want to get their hands on some interceptions. They want to turn the ball over, force Trevor Lawrence into some of those mistakes. So it's going to be an interesting battle, but hey, that could be where the game is won and lost. Can the Colts defensive backs really try to put pressure and make things difficult for these Jaguars pass catchers, or are we going to see the Jags just pass their way up and down the field and end up blowing out this defense? So going to be a very, very interesting matchup to watch as we head into Sunday. Drake, X factor, who do you think from the Colts is the player that needs to have the biggest impact for the Colts to come out with this game with a victory 4-2 and atop the AFC South.
I had a pass rusher, but as I've been thinking about this, and I think Derek made a good point there. I'm going to go with Juju Brents. That's who I'm going with, and I'm going to blow people's minds. DeAndre Hopkins is 6'1". He's 218 pounds. Juju Brents is 6'4", and he's 205 pounds. That's just not your typical defensive back. You can't practice against that unless you have it, and that's not just growing in off of trees in the NFL. That is ridiculous size. And Calvin Ridley is the same height, only he's lighter in weight. So if Juju Brents can actually get him where he wants him in press coverage, it could be a really difficult day for Calvin Ridley. Now, I think that if they run a little bit more zone, maybe you see Ridley get some catches, but Brent's length is such a problem that he can make interceptions and deflections happen in passing lanes that you wouldn't expect. So I think Juju Brents, even though he's a rookie, he's shown enough promise for me to feel like I can throw the responsibility of him needing to have an X factor type of game. So give me Juju Brents all day.
I'm going to highlight this one because I think it's a very interesting X factor. Wyatt Law, the gentleman that he is, says Drew Ogletree will eat. People forget Drew Ogletree caught that first catch right down the seam against the Jaguars in the first meeting from Anthony Richardson. Then he came out because he was concussed on the play. Drew Ogletree been getting more and more of the snaps. I think he got 61% of the Colts snaps at tight end last week. Drew Ogletree coming on more and more. We'll have to see. But for me, it's the guy that is going to have his revenge game. It's Gardner Minshew. Because of how this offense has to adapt with Gardner Minshew. What we saw in Baltimore, and I'm sure the Jaguars are going to bring pressure on Gardner Minshew. I don't think this is a game that Gardner Minshew can just keep the offense afloat and the Colts will win. I think Gardner Minshew is going to have to go out there and make some plays in order for the Colts to win. And he's, again, I don't have a concern that he's not going to be able to protect the ball. My concern with Gardner Minshew is being able to come up with those explosive plays in the passing game, because I think the Jaguars are going to really try to tighten things up on the run. They saw what Zach Moss did last week. They know what Jonathan Taylor is capable of. They're going to say, listen, Gardner, you are going to have to beat us, not this Colts running game. So I think if Gardner has a big game, and I'm not talking about 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, but I do want to see Gardner Minshew make some plays in the passing game, because I think if that happens, Colts have a good shot here. So Drake, here we go. Prediction time. Huge game in the AFC South. We haven't even mentioned it, but the Colts have not won in Jacksonville since 2014. Andrew Luck's third season in the NFL. So it's a huge challenge, and whoever wins this will have the outright lead in the AFC South and own the tiebreaker moving forward. So Drake, with the clock strikes 0 around 4:00 Eastern on Sunday, who comes out on top?
This is a rematch 5 weeks later of two incredibly brilliant offensive minds. I mean, holy crap. You're talking about Shane Steichen versus Doug Peterson. It's going to be 34-31. I think it's going to be heavy scoring, but I do put it with the Colts in favor of winning this game. Now, here's why, is because I think Steichen's going to loosen up that box. I think he's going to try to get the defense to get out of the box, because I think initially they're going to make sure they can't run the ball. I think that they're going to take advantage of that weak secondary. I think kind of like Derek said, and bring the juice right there, Josh Downs, that's going to be an important factor in the game. I think that the pass catchers are going to be huge. They're going to open up that ground game, because watching them against the Titans, against their defense, that made me really confident that they might just be able to use this ground game against anyone in the NFL. I mean, you're talking about the number 1 defense in yards per carry allowed. That's impressive to do what they did against that defense. So I think that the Colts running game is going to get going at some point. I think that the pressure in this high scoring game from the Colts front is going to be the X factor. If we're talking about a group, they're going to be what makes this win happen. And it might even happen, in the fourth quarter with Matt Gay hitting a game-winning field goal for all we know.
I think Colts fans would certainly love that. Unfortunately, I think this week I'm going on the opposite side. I do not
It's
think the
very fair.
Colts are going to break the curse. I do think the Jags get the win. I'm going to go 27-23 Jags, so I think it's a push. Colts don't cover, but they push. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. I think Gardner Minshew can go out there and do a really good job, the Colts very easily could prove me wrong, go out and dominate on the ground. But I need to see those plays from Gardner Minshew. I think it's going to be a close game, certainly, because I think these teams are very evenly matched. However, I think there's going to be some Trevor Lawrence magic probably towards the end of the game to try to get them over the hump. Remember, I think the Colts either were tied or they had the lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the fourth quarter in week one. So it's going to be a very close game, but in the end, I think the Jaguars are going to just sneak it out and get the dub. I mean, hopefully the Colts prove me wrong and are able to break the curse down there in Jacksonville. But right now, I think that the Colts aren't on that level quite yet, especially down their starting quarterback. So, and it's going to be a fantastic game regardless in Florida this weekend. Definitely going to be a heated matchup between these two teams, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So very excited to watch that game kick off 1:00 Eastern on Sunday, Colts against the Jaguars. So Drake, let's dive into the Colts injury report and give some updates here. Obviously, Colts fans have all heard the news. Came out earlier this week that the Colts officially placed Anthony Richardson on injured reserve as he recovers from that sprained AC joint in his right shoulder. Colts did not offer a timeline. Shane Steichen said, we're not sure when he would be coming back. Did not say if he would need surgery or not. Did not say if Anthony Richardson was going to play again this season. So, as of right now, everything is up in the air. We have seen him the past couple of days out at Colts practice, his right arm in a sling. But as of right now, Anthony Richardson is going to be out at least the next 4 games and probably a little bit longer.
Yeah, and real quick, actually, Greg Eggleston, you predict 27-10 Colts. Look, if that happens, then hell yes. What a win.
An incredible win.
Love the confidence with that one. It sucks. It sucks to see Anthony Richardson have to sit out. But look, as expected, I mean, the Colts, but especially Shane Steichen, and now Shane Steichen and the Colts, neither one of those parties have ever been one to give away information. Okay. So now you combine them, they're going to be even more, tight-lipped than before. So you're not going to hear anything until you need to hear it. That's all you need to know. So right now it appears to be, what was it? A grade? Was it a grade 3?
Grade 3. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like that, I think Derek Carr had a grade 2 and he was out for, I think, was it a week?
He played that next week. So,
okay,
and I guess the Saints never officially came out and said what kind of grade it was, but people speculated that it was a grade 2. And Anthony Richardson, so far, from everything we've heard, and it's been confirmed, he does have a grade 3 sprain in that AC joint.
Yeah, and like just to go back to the whole Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss thing, look, you don't have to rush Jonathan Taylor back out here for 2 reasons. Number one, there's no expectations on the season still. Okay, obviously you want to make the playoffs, but it's kind of a written rule, or it's kind of like an invisible like goal that it's to develop this young squad. If you make the playoffs, great. But they don't need to rush Taylor out there because Moss is doing so well. It's the same thing with Anthony Richardson. Gardner Minshew is a very capable quarterback, like we've said, low-end starter, high-end backup. Well, in this case, he's still a starting level quarterback. So he's starting this game. You're confident he can at least kind of shoulder the load while you recover your franchise QB. So I think that if they need to wait 6 weeks, they'll do it. 7 weeks, they'll do it. 8 weeks, they'll do it. Look, I don't want to say this, but even if they feel like they would be better shutting him down for the season, I really think that they would turn to that before they would rush him out there. He's so young. He's 21 years old. If he has to sit out the rest of the year, hope he doesn't. But God forbid if he does, it's like at least it's happening in his rookie year. At least it's happening in a year in the next offseason where he can learn and get back to full health.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think as of right now, surgery still, it's on the table, but
Mhm.
I don't think it's likely. I could be wrong. Never say never. I definitely don't have access to that information, but my gut feeling is that if surgery needed to happen, it would have happened already. So, in my opinion, I'm still sticking with what I originally thought. I still think that we will see Anthony Richardson return after the bye. Yeah, that gives him 7 full weeks since the injury happened for him to get back on the field. So looking at week 13, no, excuse me, week 12 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Lucas Oil Stadium. The Colts are going up against the Jaguars. Then they're at home to the Browns, at home against the Saints, travel to Carolina to take on Frank Reich and the Panthers, and then they go across the pond to take on the Patriots in Germany. Then they have their bye.
Mhm.
So my guess is they're not going to try to push him back to return right before the bye, especially going across the country, going up against a Bill Belichick defense without any reps under your with hardly any reps under your belt the past month. Just let him rest. Wait, have that full the week of the bye to rest and recover, and then think about having him come back if he's feeling good against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The initial timeline for this has been 4 to 8 weeks. That would put him at 7 weeks to return. He comes back against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That gives him seven regular season games left to go out there, play, gain invaluable reps. And who knows, if the Colts are still in the playoff picture at that time, the Colts may even play some more games in the postseason if they continue to win and stay in the thick of it. So, in my opinion, that's still the best case, and that's still what I think is most likely to happen. He will come back after the bye, have 7 full weeks to rehab and rest, and just get ready for the stretch run to end the season. Another super chat from the CFO, Patrick here. Thank you so much, buddy. It really means so much. Patrick says, piggybacking off a Wyatt Law's question from before, in 2024, do we see Zach Moss and Gardner Minshew on the team week 1, or do other teams snag them up? So Drake, I'm gonna let you answer this first, and I'm gonna try to find Wyatt's question from before. But do you think Zach Moss and Gardner Minshew are both on the Colts week 1 of next year?
I think there's a far higher likelihood of Minshew being on the Colts than there is Moss, because I think Zach Moss has just shown that he is a legitimate threat to be a running back one on any franchise. Like he can make it happen. Okay, Gardner Minshew. I think that the league, of course, there's going to be quarterback needy teams that are like, well, could he be a nice spot starter? Well, that's the same way the Colts are looking at him. So I think that the Colts need to think he's great for Anthony Richardson. He knows Shane Steichen's offense. Steichen's going to be here as long as Richardson is, pretty much. So we need to keep all of that unit together. Moss is not as important to Anthony Richardson's development, especially now with Taylor getting his extension, as I think Gardner Minshew is, and I think the Colts value that a little more.
Yeah, and I'll bring up Wyatt Law's question here. Can we afford both Moss and JT after 2023? So it's a very good question. And in my opinion, I think if another team out there is offering Gardner Minshew the opportunity to be their starter,
Mhm.
and the money that comes along with it, I mean, sure, Gardner Minshew, of course, you wouldn't blame him one bit for wanting to go out and take that. However, if not, and the Colts kind of up his salary and get him up to maybe top backup money in the NFL, then I think there's a good chance that the Gardner Minshew stays with Indianapolis. As far as Zach Moss is concerned, no, I do not see Zach Moss being back with the Colts next year. When you're paying a running back $14 million, you're paying him to be that bell cow running back that Jonathan Taylor has proven he can be. So Zach Moss is going to want an opportunity to go start somewhere and be that number one running back. The Colts will be getting Evan Hall back next year. The Colts already have Trey Sermon on the roster as a backup. And looking ahead to the 2024 NFL draft, this is a pretty loaded running back class, especially probably for day 3. You could be able to snag another running back to come in and provide some depth there. But so no, I don't think Zach Moss will be back, unfortunately, but that's because he's earned the right to go earn more money somewhere else and be the top running back for an organization. So great question, Patrick and Wyatt, and thank you so much for the super chat. Really, really, really appreciative of all of your support. So outside of Anthony Richardson, let's look at the practice report from this week. So these guys all missed the game last Sunday against the Titans, but they have practiced in full every single day so far this week. Bernard Ryman and Kwity Paye entering the final stage of the concussion protocol. I think the last step for them is just to be cleared by an independent neurologist, which could be happening either tonight or tomorrow. And then Shaq Leonard, who missed last week with a groin injury, full participant all week. Looks like that groin injury is gone, and Shaq is ready to go, which is a nice boost to the Colts defense. Mo Alley Cox had the concussion last week's game. He was a limited participant today in the red non-contact jersey, so he's entering the final stages of the concussion protocol, which is good to see. And then Braden Smith, after not practicing Wednesday to foot, wrist, and hip injuries. Braden is just so banged up, man. He was a limited participant today. So all of these guys trending in the right direction to play on Sunday. And the Colts could be pretty healthy outside of their starting quarterback, unfortunately, which is probably the most important of all these injuries. But overall, all the Colts are trending in the right direction, and this team is pretty healthy heading into a huge Week 6 matchup.
Yeah, and I would tend to think that Braden Smith is definitely trending towards playing. I mean, these offensive linemen, they're built different. I mean, they'll go out, these offensive defensive front guys, they'll just go out there and play when they're banged up. I mean, look at DeForest Buckner all last year. So I would think that, like you said, the worst injury is obviously Anthony Richardson. But hey, if Braden Smith plays, you have a fully healthy, capable now Colts offensive line, giving Gardner Minshew the best possible protection and situation that he can have. So hey, that's even better if you can get Braden Smith to stay healthy.
Exactly. So let's move along to the latest Colts news and rumors. And I know a lot of you guys wanted to talk about it, so we're going to dive into the big rumor coming about the Colts that came out today. Our friend Destin Adams, former colleague here at Horseshoe Huddle, he's been killing it over at his new gig. So shout out to Destin for just being one of our top resources and everything, and a really good friend to both Drake and I. But Destin reported this today that the Colts have inquired about Broncos wide receiver Jerry Jeudy in a possible trade. So there's been a lot of reports coming out of Denver that the Broncos do plan on trading Jerry Jeudy and have made him available across the league. Now, the Colts, this is the first time they have checked in on Jerry Jeudy before. Chris Ballard and his group have reached out to the Broncos in the past about the availability of Jerry Jeudy to do their due diligence. This would be at least the second time that has been reported or publicly known of the Colts voicing interest in the Broncos wide receiver. Was the 15th pick in the 2020 NFL draft. Drake, this could be a big move. If the Colts did pull this off, would be a very interesting add to this offense. So what's your opinion on Jerry Jeudy, and what kind of impact do you think he could make in this Colts offense?
Well, judging how the Colts had 4 wide receivers not long ago, I don't really know if I'm too much behind that they'll go for this. But here's the thing: I think both sides can benefit from this, because right now the Broncos are struggling way worse than they anticipated. All right, they did not expect for this kind of season to be unfolding. I think they're like 1-4 and they're 0-3 at home, so they're not doing well. So the fire sale tag is starting to kind of populate. I think that if they're looking to Jeudy was there when Sean Payton showed up. He's got the type of experience, type of like respect in the NFL, where I think that if he wants to do something his way and he says Jerry Jeudy's not the guy in my scheme, then maybe they're going to benefit from getting rid of him, because he's not even hit his prime yet. I mean, the dude, how old is he? He's like He's 24 years old. So
Mhm.
young, so young. He's already got 4 years. This is his 4th season in the NFL. That's bonkers. Okay, so he's still got the age on his side. They could get some picks. They could probably get some young players for him. And if the Colts were willing to give them up, which they've got some of that they could make happen, I think that they're looking for saying to themselves, hey, this is a guy that he could be put with Josh Downs. He could be put with Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, if he can be unlocked eventually. That's a really, really intimidating, quad of receivers that you have to face. So I think that he could have a really good place in Shane Steichen's offense. Maybe it's the way that he gets unlocked, but he also has some really big injury concerns. So I think the Colts are going to look deeper into that than most people think. And they might say, look, the guy has only played 45 games over 4 seasons. Or, excuse me, actually, it was 41 games over 3 seasons, before that. So that's really not very healthy. It was 10 in 2021, and then he missed a couple in 2022, and he's kind of dealt with some more injuries this year. So we'll see. I think that if he can be unlocked, though, in Shane Steichen's offense, Chris Ballard might go for it.
Yeah, I think obviously if he did come over, he'd have to play the Z role. It would probably be Alec Pierce's position, rather than moving into the X role of a Michael Pittman. And it's interesting because coming out, Jerry Jeudy was seen as a bona fide wide receiver one. He was a very good route runner, very good top end speed as well, and he was seen as more of a route specialist. So it does seem like he could add an element to this Colts offense. I think it's all going to be about price, though. There's going to be a lot of teams, a lot of contenders that are out there looking to see, if Jerry Jeudy could possibly give us that wide receiver to help get our offense over the top and really bring an extra element for the stretch run. So it'd be interesting. I know the Colts have been very interested in Jerry Jeudy in the past. Chris Ballard really likes him. You wouldn't have to necessarily pay Jerry Jeudy right away either. The Broncos did pick up his 5th-year option, so in that 2020 draft, he'd be under contract this season as well as next season. Was in that same draft class as Michael Pittman Jr. and Jonathan Taylor. That could make things a little bit tricky. As far as cap wise, if you're going to pay Michael Pittman Jr. After this season, and then say Jerry Jeudy does well and you want to keep him on board, you pay him. Then all of a sudden you're paying those 2 wide receivers top money. $20 million a year. So it could get a little bit interesting that way. My gut feeling says that there's probably going to be another team that outbids the Colts for Jerry Jeudy. But who knows? If the Colts really love Jerry Jeudy enough, Shane Steichen really signs off on him and believes he is the missing piece to unlock this wide receiver core, then the Colts might pull the trigger. We'll kind of have to see how things go along. The trade deadline isn't for another couple weeks, so this could drag on a little bit as well, but definitely an intriguing wide receiver to keep a look at as we get closer to the trade deadline and we see where this Colts team is by week 8.
Yeah, and I think it's also going to depend on if they think he can help Anthony Richardson in the long run. Because again, he's
Right.
24 years old. He fits the youthful kind of profile of the offense. So we'll have to see. Just be on the lookout, everyone.
Yeah, and then I'm also kind of on the fence of giving up on Alec Pierce so early because you
Oh
think
yeah.
I don't know if Alec Pierce would be involved in that trade to Denver or whether the Colts would just be able to give draft capital in return and kind of keep Pierce on as well, so that way you're not necessarily giving up on him. It'd be interesting to see how the terms would work out there. Another super chat from Patrick. He says someone asked before if Pierce would be added as a sweetener with a later pick. Sounds like they're similar. So I'd say Alec Pierce definitely has better speed than Jerry Jeudy, a much bigger wide receiver. Jerry Judy's only about 6'1", 190 pounds, whereas Alec Pierce is in the 6'3", 200 in just 215, 210 range there. Alec Pierce has definitely had the more athletic of the two. He's got a much better vertical than Jerry Jeudy. So it's kind of who would you like to see more of the route runner that Jerry Jeudy is, or more of the deep threat of Alec Pierce. So not exactly similar in their playing styles, but they would play the same Z wide receiver position. So good question, Patrick. Thank you so much for the super chat, buddy. I feel like I'm a broken record saying that, but hey, for you, any time, buddy. Let's move along, Drake, to our final couple news updates for this week for the Colts. The Colts did sign guard Ike Bodiger to the 53-man roster from the practice squad. He takes Anthony Richardson's spot on there. Just more interior offensive line depth, which in this league you can never go wrong. But here's I think the more interesting signing. The Colts signed quarterback Kellen Mond and wide receiver Anthony Miller to the practice squad. So Kellen Mond was drafted by the Vikings, didn't really work out there. It was only a couple years ago. The Colts now bring him on as that emergency quarterback, and then Anthony Miller, speedy wide receiver who had some success with the Chicago Bears. Another intriguing wide receiver prospect, because we already talked about it. Amari Rodgers just got elevated to the active roster. KJ Hamler is on the practice squad. Now you bring Anthony Miller onto the practice squad. So Colts are kind of beefed up at wide receiver. I wouldn't say beefed up. That's a stretch, because these guys are on the practice squad after all. But they have a lot of intriguing names towards the end of their wide receiver depth chart and on the practice squad.
Well, they're bringing in veterans, and they want 3 quarterbacks on the roster. That's why Mond is here. But, hey, they got Miller, they got Hamler, they've got Rodgers. All 3 of those guys are veterans at wide receiver. So if we're talking practice squad standards, yeah, that's pretty beefy.
Exactly. And then to make room for those guys, the Colts did release wide receiver Juwan Winfrey from the practice squad. Winfrey had already been called up twice this season from the practice squad. So if he was called up again, he would have to be elevated to the active roster. So instead of elevating him to the active roster, he unfortunately goes as Anthony Miller is brought on. But big game this weekend, Drake. Colts Jaguars in Jacksonville for the outright lead in the AFC South. Gardner Minshew revenge game. Colts fans, I think, certainly hope so. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, tune in, because Gardner Minshew is going to give everything he can. He's going to have that gritty performance against his old team. And, hey, for all we know, he's going to pull out the win and end this curse in Indianapolis of winning in Jacksonville.
Colts might finally break the streak, and who better to do it than the mustache himself. So that's our show for this evening, guys. Really, really appreciate everybody who tuned in and joined in live with our chat. Want to give a shout out to our super chats for the evening. Lawrence Stogner, Patrick Rye, the CFO of Horseshoe Huddle, and my beautiful wife, Danielle Moore. No Stats Matt tonight. Stats Matt must have been busy, whether it's a fishing tournament or mowing grass. Stats Matt always has an excuse. I mean, what's this guy doing here? I'm kind of sick of it. But and thank you all so much who've had more dedication than Stats Matt to come on the show tonight. We really appreciate it. And if you haven't done so, please, we really wish and really hope that you follow us on all of our social medias, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I are going live, whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up Show, so you never miss an episode. And if you can't catch us live, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star review. Got a final super chat from the evening from NFL Nerd over in Nova Scotia. Really, really appreciate all of your support overseas, and love that you have found our show and continue to watch us. Always fun to chat with you, NFL Nerd. Thanks a lot for your support. Drake, you've been pumping out content on horseshoehuddle.com. Tell the people what they can go check out.
So I just did the rumor about Jerry Jeudy potentially being traded to the Colts, to go check that out. Also about how Zach Moss single-handedly by himself is outperforming several NFL teams in rushing. And then, of course, I will be releasing the 3 goals that the Colts offense has to achieve to defeat the Jaguars on Sunday.
Look at this. And Patrick's nightly donation to Drake's open bar for his wedding. Patrick,
going to be an open bar.
Patrick is the real MVP right there. For myself, you can go check out a piece on the top 5 graded Colts from their win over the Tennessee Titans. And then Shane Steichen really opened up about how he feels about Gardner Minshew and what he can do this weekend, not only this weekend against the Jaguars, but what he can do for the Colts moving forward until Anthony Richardson does return. So, real honest stuff from Shane Steichen. So make sure you go check that out and all the other great pieces from the writers at horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we will be back Monday night to break down everything from the Colts trip to Jacksonville, and hopefully we're talking to you on Victory Monday. So enjoy the game, enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you Monday night.